Okay, so our next presenter comes to us online, Charlotte Glass from Technopolis. How are you, Charlotte? Can you hear me?
Hi, Brian, I can. Thank you so much. I'm just going to throw my slides up on the screen there. Can you see those okay?
I can see them just fine. Thank you.
Brilliant. So, firstly, just say thank you so much for inviting kind of us to speak. I'm conscious that on your programs, you'll see the name Thomas Lozoukas from the Alan Turing Institute, and unfortunately he's fallen ill, so hasn't been able to present today and asked me to step in his absence. So firstly, thank you for kind of patience on that sense. As many of you will already be aware, earlier this year, the Alan Turing Institute and Technopolis delivered a review of digital research infrastructure requirements for AI here in the UK. Perhaps as you might expect, it's a kind of a large and complex study that touches on a lot of different complex and interrelated issues, many of which I believe that you've been talking about and discussing over the last 2 days here as well. I'm conscious of time and not wanting to eat too much into your break this morning. We'll be giving a kind of a light touch overview of some of our headline kind of findings, conclusions, recommendations. Of course, we'll also then invite you to ask questions, reflections, any further comments as we have time for. As a refresher, the purpose, the objective of the study really was to provide an evidence base to inform and guide future policies, activities in relation to digital research infrastructure, with the specific focus on supporting the development and the adoption of AI. So to do this, we're looking to capture the current and the future needs of the UK's AI research and innovation communities, looking particularly through three different pillars, three different lenses, looking at compute, so understanding the computational needs for AI researchers and also practitioners, those that use AI, looking at data access, and also, quite importantly, looking at people, looking at the skills provision that already exist, and also to understand how the demand for those skills are changing over time. The particular audience for this study, as many of you may have seen, that we've recently published our kind of headline summary report publicly available on the Alan Turing website. So in that sense, the audience is partly public, but also thinking specifically and aiming specifically to inform UKRI's digital research infrastructure activities, to inform research councils, Innovate UK's particular strategies and activities, but also as well, perhaps to inform and reflect, guide, form a kind of institutional level of activities as well. So I mentioned before, much of what we've found in these areas kind of reflects and echoes many of the talks and the presentations that you've been hearing over the last few days as well. But to answer some of these questions, we brought together convened a core study team of researchers, both within the Alan Turing Institute and here within Technopolis. We were also supported by an advisory group, which included representatives from across the digital research infrastructure landscape, as well as a steering group of stakeholders from within UKRI and government. In terms of the specific scope that we were looking at, perhaps most importantly in some ways, to be clear on the definitions that we're using to understand what we mean by AI and what we mean by digital research infrastructure. The definition of AI we have used is quite broad and follows that used within the National AI Strategy, encapsulating kind of machines that perform tasks normally performed by human intelligence, especially where those machines learn from data how to do those tasks. Our scope for digital research infrastructure, we've used one that borrows from the from UKRI's kind of scope and understanding, which includes the full breadth of large-scale compute facilities, data storage facilities, software and code libraries, as well as looking at the mechanisms of access and the people that support and deliver these infrastructures. And for the wider AI research and innovation community, again, our scope was quite broad. So looking at both academic and industry users and researchers, and the concept where AI researchers and practitioners, the full breadth covering those that are developing algorithms, tools, and software frameworks, as well as those that are applying AI to support their R&D activities. In terms of our data collection activities, so we undertook a program of around kind of 75 interviews, which I expect also include many of you here in the room today. So thank you again for your time and your contributions. We also delivered a stakeholder survey of AI practitioners and researchers, and this also included a breadth of career stages and levels, all the way through down to kind of postdoc students, as well as the breadth of kind of research fields and domains. This survey was disseminated through multiple different channels, including the Turing's website, existing mailing lists, research councils, etc. And resulted in a total of 287 usable responses. We've also then complemented these primary data collection activities with a program of desk research. So in particular, looking to profile certain aspects of the existing digital research infrastructure landscape here in the UK, also drawing and building upon the existing data and documentation that reflect on some of these core issues that we're asking in this study. And in addition, providing an international comparison, looking to profile the compute provision in a certain set of countries. So in particular, we looked at Japan, Canada, the USA, France, and Germany. So to move on now to some of our findings and conclusions, looking at the compute capacity here in the UK, I mean, we already know that AI is proving invaluable in addressing societal challenges and key areas of interest for the UK economy here. And also we see the AI adoption or the adoption of AI tools and techniques is rapidly accelerating, proliferating across a number of research fields and domains. Reflecting this, access to compute systems with GPUs was identified as the highest priority by researchers to meet both their current and future needs. And in particular, the demand for digital research infrastructure for AI, the demand for compute in particular, was expected to more than double over the next 5 years. So we're expecting a rapid kind of large-scale growth on that side of things. At the moment, researchers primarily obtain their compute for AI from institutional resources, coupled with commercial cloud services. And in particular, the AI compute facilities at universities were often based within research groups and labs rather than provided at an institutional or a tier 3 level. In terms then of the barriers that we have seen, one of the barriers identified was that the UK doesn't have a national compute or a tier 1 capability for researchers wishing to use AI tools and techniques, limiting their use then for larger workloads. AI-capable hardware at EPSRC's tier 2 supercomputing centres is provided, it is used. Unfortunately, however, it means that they are often already running at maximum capacity. Researchers then also reported difficulties in engaging with some of these tier 2 centres in relation to their AI projects, primarily due to the access processes and unfamiliar technical environments. And that researchers were often constrained by capacity limitations of their existing tier 3 facilities and the available budget for commercial cloud services. As a result then, compute for AI research was not equally accessible across the research and innovation communities. As we mentioned, one aspect of the job was to be looking at the compute capacity available within comparator countries. And we did find that many of these countries have a national AI compute capacity in place at a much larger scale than is currently available in the UK, and are already investing in the next generation of facilities. In particular, the UK's petascale supercomputers cannot match the next generation of pre-exascale and exascale facilities launched in the US, in Japan, within the Euro-HPC joint undertaking. As a result, the compute capacity available for use here within the UK is significantly lower than that is available in these comparator countries. In terms then, again, a very brief and high-level summary of some of our core recommendations and requirements. Perhaps I should also add here that I'm conscious and aware that there are a number of different initiatives, investments and activities that are already looking to address some of these requirements and recommendations as well. So it's also perhaps then a reflection that there are some of these areas of activities are already kind of underway. But in summary, our recommendations requirements for compute. Definitely in the short term, there is a need to accelerate planning for a national tier 1 facility partly by feeding in some of these review requirements, as well as the activities across these other initiatives, programs we've already heard about. And this will primarily be necessary to ensure that the UK really is internationally competitive in this area. There's also a need to undertake further work to measure the compute capacity available for AI in the UK. As we mentioned, a lot of the compute capacity is available at an institutional level or even at a research group or an individual researcher level. So trying to understand and fully profile the breadth of compute capacity that's available and being used is incredibly challenging. Despite that, we do see and understand that there is a need to both scale up and scale out the UK's existing compute capacity for AI. So that includes increasing current capacity, AI-capable facilities, establishing new ones, or again, working out kind of routes for providing access to commercial cloud for AI. There's also a need to support the sustainability and the continuity of existing UKRI-supported AI-capable systems. So again, thinking in particular here about the tier 3 and tier 2 level of facilities. I think as we've also heard as well this morning in relation to the Excalibur project, there's a real value and a need to support increasing coordination and collaboration amongst these digital research infrastructure providers, which in turn we hope will improve the accessibility and again the consistency across these digital research infrastructure systems. And lastly, there's a need to kind of raise awareness of these digital research infrastructure facilities, specifically for AI, and provide support in their availability and smooth the way for their access. And finally, there's a need to finally kind of explore some of the potential of next generation AI systems through kind of technology foresight and horizon scanning activities and initiatives. So, for example, building on the work of Excalibur's testbeds programs might be an interesting avenue to follow this through. Thinking then about data access. In terms of the current state, we understand and see a range of open data initiatives from UKRI and other public funding bodies. However, we still see that the potential for AI for research and innovation really isn't fully being realized, primarily due to these issues around data access. And researchers noted that the broader adoption of AI will very much depend on significant effort around improving the standards and the processes for collating and organizing data. Reflecting this as well, data interoperability is becoming increasingly crucial, especially to support the use of AI techniques in interdisciplinary research contexts. And perhaps reflecting the expectation, the need for increased compute capacity, the amount of data that researchers are working with is also expected to increase tenfold over the next 5 years. In terms then of the barriers that researchers face in terms of accessing data, many researchers cited concerns around potential ethical, legal, political complexities that can be present and can have a significant effect on data sharing and also then data reuse. Data owners and users often struggle to prepare data sets for processing by AI tools due to that significant lack of specialist expertise. We also see varied access and licensing models and data interoperability issues that can make it challenging to combine data from multiple sources. Reflecting this to a certain extent as well, we see that public sector data can be of varied quality and often challenging to access as well. And on the flip side, commercial data sets can be prohibitively expensive for researchers to license and to work with. Following on from this, then, our key recommendations, requirements will be to support the development and adoption of AI data standards and ensure that research data is AI ready. There's a need to support interdisciplinary AI research. So, for example, that might be through identifying core data storage and management requirements across different disciplines. We also acknowledge there's a need to continue to improve the accessibility and the quality of public data sets for AI. There's a need to explore the mechanisms and the instrument to support collecting the collation of data sets from disparate data sources, and again, kind of brokeraging access to commercial data sets for researchers. We also finally see a need for exploring the potential of co-locating compute and data for large-scale public data sets and trusted research environments, again, to try and improve the access and the efficiency of some of these processes. Last, but definitely not least, and perhaps I might add as well that quite often in our data collection activities, in our interviews, as much as we try to talk about data access and compute first, people and skills was almost always brought up as kind of front and center. So I think that even if I'm talking about it last, it definitely is a priority, and in many ways an area that we should and will need to continue investing in future. Perhaps then reflecting this, the current state. So we do see teams of research technologies professionals within universities are relatively small and often kind of working to support a breadth of needs across the institutions and supporting a breadth of research domain and environments. The central funding for digital research infrastructure is often capital funding with little or no support for kind of operational funding, which means little or no support for kind of staffing to really assist those researchers in adopting and exploiting the infrastructure that is provided at tier 3 levels. These providers can also often struggle to recruit and to retain staff with the necessary skills. And this ties back into issues around kind of contractual standards and processes within universities, pay scales, and also those career pathways and clarity of the opportunities available. We also found as well that staffing can or may be constrained to particular projects. So, for example, where a project has obtained particular funding for research software engineering support. In terms then of the barriers, there are significant gaps in the training and the knowledge amongst the research community themselves in terms of developing and using these digital research infrastructure for AI, with just under 40% of survey respondents saying they had poor or very poor skills in organizing and structuring their data or code alone. So there's a real kind of foundation level of skills that we need to be working on. In addition, the fast-paced development of AI tools and techniques highlight the need for truly continuous and ongoing professional development. This is particularly the case for kind of staff working within digital research infrastructure who are providing support to the delivery, the implementation of that compute and data access, and also kind of providing support then to the wider research community in its use. And finally, then the training and the documentation available often don't reflect the differing needs of AI researchers or the wider research community. Very quickly, then conclusions, recommendations, kind of requirements for the future. will be that in the longer term, in the short and the long term, we need to be exploring potential routes, potential funding models really to support the research technology professional career paths, competitive pay structures, job securities, both within specialist research infrastructure facilities, but also then within our university level or institutional teams. There's a need to explore approaches to providing dedicated institutional digital research infrastructure staff capacity. So again, this is about increasing the scale of provision of support within our institutions. There is a need to provide opportunities for research technology professional staff kind of upskilling in AI. So again, thinking about that rapid pace of development and the breadth of tools that are being implemented. We're also going to need a specific training activities or reflections about how do we promote the uptake of AI techniques in underrepresented disciplines. So for example, that might be through support for training AI training courses in domain or research specific fields. We need to continue to support the training of AI specialists to maximize their use of digital research infrastructure. So, for example, building on the activities of our kind of CDTs or our existing AI fellowships. And there's definitely a need as well to engage with industry and academia, both to kind of continue to raise awareness of the potential for AI more broadly, and to support the communities, development of communities of practice and interdisciplinary collaboration again. And this might include through kind of demonstrating and showing the potential for AI in research fields in which it's currently quite nascent. And finally, there's a need to support digital research infrastructures or providers to engage with those non-expert users. So again, this comes back to and reflects a need to support increased capacity within these infrastructures. Overall, and perhaps very, very quickly, our key headline findings and conclusions from our study. Really, the UK needs to scale up and continuously invest in its digital research infrastructure for AI if it seeks to become a global AI superpower. That the compute capacity of AI needs to be increased while ensuring it is still accessible and easily accessible, configurable, adjustable, and really to promote collaboration. And it is ensuring these different aspects that will really enable major scientific advances in the coming years. We also need to ensure that any investment in AI hardware or compute for AI needs to be matched by investments and training and support to really maximize the uptake, the efficiency, and to realize the benefits of that investment. And finally, there's definitely a need as well to encourage unified data management standards and sharing policies between researchers to ensure this data access continues to improve. So I'm not sure how we're doing for time, Brian, and whether or not we have time for any questions, comments, reflections. I will just caveat to say that I can't hear the audio in the room particularly well, so I don't know if it might be easier to write questions in the chat at all.
Yeah, it's been rather tough to get room audio. But yeah, let's go ahead and get a couple questions here for Charlotte if we can. Any questions? Okay.
You talked about the investment in people and AI hardware. Do you have any thoughts about the investment in the AI software that's being used in software development in the area?
Yeah, so Charlotte, the question is, do you have any thoughts on the investments of AI software?
So I think that casting my mind back, I think that access to and development of AI software wasn't an issue that came up in particular relative to some of the other issues that we had talked about. However, we do kind of appreciate and understand, acknowledge that as much as we can talk about hardware, it's the software packages that tie into that as well. And I think that's in particular when we're thinking about our existing tier 2 and tier 3 facilities, the software kind of packages and tools that they are using and kind of sharing can sometimes kind of be then a barrier to researchers engaging with them. And again, also that coordination between different facilities and the capacity to switch between different facilities depending upon which kind of software packages and tools that they are using. So I think that it's not necessarily a question, at least from my perspective, I could be corrected, it's not necessarily a question about the specific development of those software packages, but it's more about ensuring kind of coordination and that we have the people and the skills to be able to either kind of work with those software packages or and teach other people to do so, and kind of translate between them. But yes, I kind of take that question. Yeah.
Thank you. And one question coming in from online from Robin is, when will the full report be published?
So that's, as I say, we have the summary report that's available on the Alan Turing Institute's website. As the full report itself technically sits with UKRI, I will have to defer and we'll have to get back to you on that one because I don't know what the current timeline or plan is for publishing the full kind of evidence document that sits behind the summary report. So that will be something that we can touch base for in the coming weeks, I expect.
Okay, fantastic. I think that's the last question. Charlotte, appreciate you being able to attend online.
Brilliant, thank you. And just a final point as well, if there are any other questions, comments, reflections, please do get in touch with either Thomas or myself, and we can do what we can.
Thank you, Charlotte Glass, everyone.